Welcome back, everybody. Today we are talking about Elemental, the latest Pixar animated movie that just hit theaters this last weekend. It is directed by Peter Sohn, and it follows Ember, who is voiced by Leia Lewis, and she is a fire person living in Elemental City. One day, her whole family, her parents moved here, they're immigrants into Elemental City, and they built this kind of one-stop shop. They've got baked goods, they've got hardware supplies, they've got love readings, it's basically a one-stop shop in Firetown, which is a what do they call it? Like a borough. It's basically New York, a borough of Elemental City. And they definitely made it their own. When Ember's parents, Cinder and Bernie, get there, they're refused everywhere by like cloud rent owners, water rent owners, plant rent owners, because they're fire, because they're very combustible. And so they're kind of like forced into this part of town that's like kind of falling apart, and they really make it their own. A lot more fire people move in with them. They create this whole neighborhood, and it turns out that Bernie, Cinder's dad, wants to retire, and she's going to take over the shop. But does she want to do that? One day she runs into Wade Ripple, who is voiced by Mamadou Athie. You guys probably saw him last in Jurassic World Dominion. Is that what that movie was called? God, that was so bad. But I do like him. And he starts showing her a different side of the city because she's never been out of Firetown. She's never crossed the bridge into basically the Manhattan of Elemental City. And starts to show her like maybe she doesn't want to take over the shop. Maybe wants to do something else. And, this has a 59 on IMDb, and, it's been all over the news that this movie hasn't done well at the box office. It's got a $200 million budget, and it's only grossed $50 million worldwide, and that number's probably barely going to go up from there. So this is definitely a box office failure, and I guess somewhat of a critical failure, too. But, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought this movie had its heart in all the right places. Now, are the beats there? Are the cookie cutter beats there for the story of them having a love montage, them falling in love, them falling out of love, them falling back in love? Like they're solving problems together, they're learning from each other. Yes, those things are there. But I feel like especially this was a tough time to release this movie right after Spider-Verse, where it's like the most groundbreaking animated movie possibly in the history of the genre. And this movie looks great. This movie looks really great. And I feel like we are taking Pixar a little bit for granted. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that Pixar movies have gone straight to Disney Plus for the last, 2 years, 3 years? Turning Red, Disney Plus, Soul, Disney Plus, Luca, Disney Plus. Now, granted, Luca was like height of the pandemic, so I agree with that situation. But maybe I don't know. That whole thing is just a blur of a timeline. But Turning Red could have definitely been in theaters for sure, and I think it would have done well in theaters. But now, you set people in these mindsets of like, hey, just don't worry, you can wait for it on Disney Plus. People are going to do that. It's expensive to go to the movies. Having A-List has saved me thousands of dollars, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't want to pay $21 to go see this at a Dolby screen. Now, granted, I really enjoyed this movie. The soundtrack is great. There is a bop of a song in their little love montage in there that I have added to my Spotify playlist. The animation is breathtaking. The fact that both of them, you're just looking at them, and I had like this kind of out-of-body experience while I was looking at Ember, and I was like, oh, the flames are constantly moving. Oh, on Wade, there's always bubbles around him, and the water's constant, like his hair, like his little poof hair, is like a wave that's like constantly crashing. And it's like, we're just taking this for granted because it's not Spider-Verse. And while I love Spider-Verse. It is definitely my #1 movie with a bullet this year, and possibly the greatest animated movie of all time, and possibly one of the greatest movies of all time. It's recency bias, but boy, it is up there. But man, Pixar is just like, it's just Pixar. No, there was a trailer for a movie coming out where a little kid is like the representative for Earth about them being aliens or something like that. That looks like basic Pixar for sure. This is not basic Pixar. This is not round people, big eyes, basic Pixar. This is so gorgeous, and I feel like everyone's just kind of like, No, there are things to go at in this world. Ant-Man Quantumania, which I had a perfectly fine time with, but you know what? That was like, There, Shazam, Fear of the Gods, Cocaine Bear, This is not one of those movies. I am so surprised at the reception of this movie because I had a really good time. I love the story of the immigrant parents and what they had to give up and what Ember is going through. We're like, yeah, I might have dreams, but my parents sacrificed so much. Is it right for me to be like, I don't want to run the shop, which you guys have given up your whole life to raise me and support me and bring me into this world, into a new life where hopefully it's better for us. And I love that part. My parents, I'm not first generation American, but they moved away from their family in Texas to start a new life here in California and started from the bottom and worked their way up. So I do understand that to a certain degree. And it was a really touching story. Did it stay surface level? Could I have used a little bit more? Yes. There's this side plot. It's kind of the reason they get together, and I didn't really need that. I understand the reason behind it, but it reminds me of Miss Marvel, where I didn't finish that show because all of the Marvel stuff in it was the worst part about it. I loved all the family dynamic about it, everything about her, her friend being the leader of the mosque, everything about that was great. All the Marvel stuff in it didn't work for me whatsoever. So I'm happy to report that this is a strong recommend for me. Now, is it cookie cutter? Are there cookie cutter story elements to it? Yes. This isn't breaking new ground, but that doesn't mean it's not a well-told story with great performances, a really good score, and one heck of a bop in there, which I don't think it'll be like the song of the summer. It's not going to be like Sunflower or any of the others, brought up Spider-Verse enough, any of the Metro Boomin album. But man, I had a great time. I did. I do. I have no problem in saying that I had a really good time with this movie, and I'm really glad I saw it instead of The Flash. I think my review of The Flash, guys, is probably going to wait till VOD on my my R site, my Caribbean site, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, and I have no problem saying that because, yeah, you know why. But thank you guys so much for watching. Strong recommend for Elemental. If you guys do wait for Disney Plus, I totally understand it. Movies are expensive. But if you have a chance to see this in theaters, it is worth seeing in theaters. I will say that much. Thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.